Welcome to Unapologetically Sensitive, where you can learn, relate, laugh, and maybe even live a bolder, brighter life. I'm your host, Patricia Young. This is a weekly podcast where we explore the strengths we have because of our sensitivity and some of the challenges it poses as well. The information in this podcast is not a substitute for help from a licensed mental health professional. Many of the people that I work with tell me that they don't know how to show up authentically, that they haven't had the experience of being in safe environments with people that understand and can honor the trait of being highly sensitive. If this is true for you, or if you have it and you want more, you might think about taking the next online HSP course. It's a 10-week course. We meet weekly for an hour and 20 minutes. The topics that we cover are mindfulness and self-compassion, identifying negative messages and turning them into your strengths, perfectionism, embracing your emotions, self-care is non-negotiable, boundaries, communication, authenticity, and vulnerability, creating a lifestyle that honors the HSP, and expectations and disappointments. Jen Perry and I created a video for each week's module. There's a weekly email that has a link to the video. Sometimes there are other resources if you want to learn a little bit more. There are questions for reflection. You can do the homework. You can not do the homework. What I've heard from people is it can be so affirming to be in a group of people that get you. And I have a client right now who's taking the current group, and she says it's just fascinating. She has never been around other HSPs before, and she's only been around people that told her she was too sensitive or making a big deal out of things. She's learning language about how to communicate about her feelings, and I love watching her process unfold because she often talks to me when we meet for our individual session. Nobody in the group knows that she's a client. I don't share that information. But I just love watching her awe as she learns more about the trait and sees how it shows up in other people. Registration is going to start March 30th and go through April 13th. There's an early bird registration. If you're interested in learning more about the course, you can go to unapologeticallysensitive.com. There's an HSP groups tab. I've done interviews with a number of people that have taken the course. There's a video there. There are little short clips. If you have any questions, you're welcome to reach out to me. These groups have been transformational, and many of the groups have continued to meet after the 10 weeks. I can't guarantee that you will meet lifelong friends there, but it certainly is a possibility. If you're interested, I'd love to have you. Hey there. To the creatives, healers, sensitives, and deep thinkers, welcome. How are you doing? We are full on in spring right now, and I hope you're doing well and enjoying this change in the seasons, unless you are somewhere in the world where it's not springtime right now. I'm doing something a little risky today. Maisie, the puppy, is in the room. She's not in the crate. The door is open. The front door is open. I don't know where Gracie is, so we'll see how this episode goes. I really didn't want to talk about what I'm going to talk about with you today because I was feeling some shame around it and didn't consciously realize that until Jen Perry and I were talking. And it's about it's a couple things. One of them is having this belief that if I would have done things differently, I wouldn't be experiencing what I'm experiencing now, which is totally false. And I'll give you more specific information about what that's about. And also this concept of just having a lot going on at one time and everybody having needs and having competing needs and getting some needs met and not getting some needs met. And how do we take care of ourselves and really honor our needs as a human being when there's a lot of things going on? What I'm hearing from my clients, from other therapists, we've been dealing with COVID now. We're going on 3 years now. I always wonder, did I get that right? And with what's going on in Ukraine right now, that's very, very challenging for those of us that have tender hearts. What's going on in the world with climate change is hard. I'm not going to be talking about any of these things, but I'm setting a stage for living with unprecedented uncertainty going on 3 years and things that we have never faced and experienced before. And it's taking a toll. It's taking a toll on many of us. And that's okay. Obviously, if you're not doing well and you're suicidal and you need to get therapy or coaching, please reach out. I always want to be mindful that I'm not endorsing people not doing well. But I also want to support the idea that I just saw something this morning about this 6-week coaching class for therapists that are burned out. And it was like, get rid of burnout, feel revitalized, love your profession again. And I think that we do go through periods where we get burned out and tired, and those are very normal cycles. And I don't know that we can eliminate, get rid of it, have it be gone for forever. We cycle in and out. And that's part of what Jen Perry and I were talking about this morning. So let me start giving you some specific information. As y'all know, if you've been listening, my mom had knee surgery. So I'm recording this in the end of March, and in February, she had knee surgery. Before she got knee surgery, we decided to get a puppy. I love Maisie, my little puppy, and it's been challenging. I've never had a puppy before, and we have Gracie, our special needs dog, as well. So just between those two things, there was an awful lot that was going on with mom's surgery. And if you've been listening to the podcast, she went to the ER 2 times because of some side effects from the pain medication, a couple of doctor's appointments. It was just a lot to manage. And I felt like I was managing it very well. I was able to paddle, and I was reaching out for support, communicating, asking for help. Like I felt like I was doing everything okay. And then on a Sunday, something happened with somebody that helps me with my business, and they had a crisis and weren't able to help me with something that I needed in the moment. There was more going on, but I didn't have that context. And so when I reached out and they said they wouldn't be available for 3 weeks to help me, and somebody tried to purchase something from my website and I wasn't able to help with the purchase because they were out of the country, this, I think, was a perfect storm for me to have a lot of my attachment injuries activated. And so some of the beliefs that came up for me, and I knew, and I know in the moment that this is not what was happening, but I share these things with you because I know I'm not alone in this. This is why I do this podcast. This is why I talk about the things that I struggle with. And what it brought up for me is I can't count on anybody. Nobody's here for me. You know, here I am having to figure this out on my own, and I'm already in a very depleted place. And this is why, you can't count on people. Even though I knew this wasn't true, it's what got activated for me. And because there were some attachment injuries around it, it also started to impact some of my other relationships because that pulls for a really young, unhealed place. Even though intellectually I knew that's not what was going on. So this happened on a Sunday. On Thursday afternoon, I went to get my second shingles vaccine. And it's interesting that I had some time between clients, and I just ran up to the Naval Hospital, which is very close to where I live, thought I could pop in, get my shingles vaccine, and come home. And it turns out they were very, very crowded. And so I texted my client and said, do you have any flexibility in our start time today? If not, I'll be home for your start time. And they were able to flex with me. We texted a little bit. It actually ended up being therapeutically very positive. But the narrative that came up for me around this is why you shouldn't do things between clients, because it imposes on clients, you're not being dependable, just a very negative narrative. So how many of you have that? If you do something and like, see, I knew this wouldn't work out. I knew I shouldn't have done this. I really worked on reframing it, and I decided to be transparent with this client because there were some things around this new relationship that had made it a little bit bumpy. And I said, I'm just going to share with you what's going on in my head. And the nice thing is we had a chance to kind of work through some of this stuff. The other thing is that I have shortcuts set on my keyboard, and I often tell my kids, lovey you, LOVIEYOU. And so I typed out a response to the client. I sent it off. I looked at my response and I said, lovey you. Then I had to say to the client, that was a mistake. I apologize. And the client joked back and said, oh, I'm sorry. I was kind of excited. So this is how we roll with things. It would have been so easy for me to not share what was going on, to not be transparent, decide I couldn't reach out to the client. I was willing to stop and come home, but these are ways that we can create more flexibility in what we do. I get my shingles vaccine. Remember, I've been stressed out. We've got a puppy. My mom's had all these needs. I had this rupture that happened a couple days ago. The next day, I don't know what happens. I don't know if it was a vaccine. I don't know if it was a combination of everything, but I slept most of the day. I didn't get out of bed till 10 in the morning, which is so not like me. I didn't have clients. And I holed up in my son's room, who lives at college now. And I really spent the next 3 days in his room, mostly sleeping and watching TV. It's like I just decided I was going to take some sick time. And this is coming off the heels of just being incredibly active and involved. I think I'd done a 10-mile paddle a couple days ago. I did a previous 10-mile paddle. I mean, I really had been very active and engaged. And all of a sudden, I just hit this wall and I couldn't do anything. And my husband is incredibly supportive, and he just let me rest, and I watched TV and just kind of played sick for a couple of days. And then Monday came around, and I think I had the HSP group. I may have had a client or two. And I was kind of able to pull myself up. But then I noticed that I started to kind of shift into what felt like depression. And I was thinking, it was about this time a little bit earlier last year in March when I had this burnout and I put a pause on the podcast. And then I kind of had some catastrophic thinking like, oh my gosh, it's happening again. And I had this belief that had I managed the stress better as it had been happening, I would not be in this place of being burned out. And I felt ashamed and embarrassed to tell you, the listener, because I want to model how I get through hard things and how we do hard things. And you know how you have like a thought that's kind of running in the back of your brain, but it's not a conscious thought. When it became conscious and I was talking to Jen about it, I thought, I think it's really important to talk about this. I also always worry about my clients because some of my clients listen to the podcast and I get concerned that you're going to think that you have to take care of me or I don't have the capacity. Or really, one of my embarrassing thoughts is maybe you go like, oh yeah, you haven't been very present and engaged. That's what was going on. And if it's going on, we can talk about it. I feel like I show up good enough for my sessions. I know how to hold space. I know how to be present. And there can be other things going on. That's a lot of what I talk about with you all is how we can hold more than one thing at a time. Anyways, so those are just things that I've been rumbling with. And when Jen and I were talking, she was talking about burnout comes in cycles. And I think that we have this idea that if we do everything right, we won't get burned out. And if we get burned out, we do everything to fix it so it doesn't happen again, as opposed to knowing. I've talked about how my energy is sometimes very expansive and sometimes it's contractive. And I've just learned to ride with that. And I think like everything else, if you struggle with depression or anxiety or burnout, provided it's not so significant that it impacts your ability to function, that we just have cycles where it's going to be up for us more than others, and then it's going to recede, and then it's going to come up. And how can we learn to lean into that as opposed to running away from it and getting fearful? So I'm here to say it's been really challenging. And so what I've been doing from this moment moving forward is looking at what is it that I need. And I've really looked at my schedule and for me, I know how many clients a day I can see, how many days a week I want to work. If I have client inquiries, what is going to work? And I've been very, very protective of my schedule and having to book things out a few weeks if I don't have room for them right now, where normally I'll squeeze an extra person in or I'll wiggle things around. And I know that's just not going to work for right now. That's one of the ways that I'm taking care of myself. And I'm just allowing myself to slow down. And my husband has been incredibly supportive and he's doing more things with the dogs and helping me out in ways that I need to be helped. And I was so tired. I did not paddle Saturday. Monday, Brenda and I usually paddle. She was out of town. I could have asked somebody to go with me. I didn't. And then this morning was our Wednesday morning early paddle. And last night, just the thought of having to load everything on my boat, not on my boat, on my car, it just felt like it was too much. I just thought I can't. And it's kind of interesting. I bought a brand new PFD, a life jacket that I got last Friday, and I haven't even been able to try it out. And I trust that it'll be fine. In the same sentence, I've been taking Maisie, the puppy, for these long walks, sometimes once or twice a day. I'm taking her into the canyon where she can run off leash. It's not that I'm not doing anything. I'm just not paddling. I'm doing something else because that's how it is right now. So when you have hiccups in your life and you're not able to follow through on the routine that you normally have, do you use that as an excuse or not an excuse, but a reason to beat yourself up? I know that in the past, I would just, if I didn't go to the gym, I didn't go to yoga, I'd feel like a failure, and then I'd feel terrible, and then I'd overeat, and then I'd watch TV, and then I'd withdraw. And so my question is, are you able to just adjust and know, like, for right now, it's not working? On Tuesdays when the podcast drops, I post on social media in quite a number of places. And last Tuesday, did not have it in me, and I did not post. It was kind of interesting to see what did the downloads look like if I'm not posting, and do we need to be creating these headliners and all of that stuff. So is there a way that you can drop into self-compassion and allow yourself to be where you're at? And if that means that some things stop for right now and you trust that when you have the energy, you will pick up and you will do what you need to do. The other thing that happened around this little rupture that happened is, for some of you, when things happen, you tell people how you feel right away. You may be more reactive, and you may need to learn to hold back a little bit and pause until the feelings and the intensity settles a little bit to see what do you need to share and what do you need to not share. For other people like me, I have learned to be so restrained and so tight and so bottled up that I don't share what's going on in the moment because I don't trust it. I knew I got activated. I wanted to sit with it. I wanted to wait. I don't want to have to apologize for anything. That didn't work for me. It created suffering for me for over a week and like a week and a half. That's just too long. And as I was talking with someone who provides support to me, and I was saying, I'd rather have to go in and apologize because it's not kind to me. And I think that my wanting to have empathy and kindness and communicate clearly and not in a charged way, it's like I want to figure it out and get it perfect before I communicate. And that I just can't do that. And I have to tell you that when I did go to share with this person, my heart was pounding and I thought, oh, am I going to be worrying about hearing back from them and what their response is? And it was actually kind of nice. I left the message for them. I got in the shower and I heard the sound on my phone that I knew that it was them responding. And I'd actually forgotten that I had left them the message. So again, things can be difficult and challenging and hard, and we can do it and not be preoccupied by it. Or you can be preoccupied. It just means that if you have relationships with people, we are going to have ruptures. We are going to be able to do repair work if we care about the relationship. And moving through those difficult times and having uncomfortable conversations, it's how we get more intimacy. It's how we become more authentic. It's how we lighten up our own energy. Just something to think about. And then the final thing is the puppy. Well, let me back up for a second. The overall theme in here, though, is about needs. Having needs, competing needs, who gets their needs met. I may have mentioned this in an episode that I've recorded that hasn't been released yet, but my husband thought he was going to have to go back into the office every day as a new thing. Since COVID, he's been able to work from home. This impacts when I can paddle and what time he goes in, because Gracie needs medication at 5 a.m. and at 7 a.m. And if he goes in, then I'm not able to paddle. Or if he goes to the gym, does he get to go to the gym or do I get to paddle? And who walks the dogs and who feeds the dogs and who does the medication? Having my mom have this knee surgery, she's had more needs. She's fiercely independent. Me needing help with something with my business and not being able to get that need met and having to use resources that are tiring to me. This is why I pay somebody to do certain things around my business. The overall theme here is needs. And for most of us who did not grow up knowing that it was okay to have needs and have that wound of feeling like we're too much, we're a burden, we don't want to feel guilty, we don't want people to get angry with us. I mean, how many of that resonates for you? That the whole concept of having needs, not getting them met, having to negotiate, having competing needs, these things can be really, really challenging, and they can activate our attachment injuries, our sense of frustration with people. It's all very normal. And this kind of ties into the puppy. So the good news is it looks like she's totally house trained. She's a little over 5 months now, and she really took to the dog door beautifully, beautifully. So I acknowledge that. The thing that's not going so great is the barking. And she has a loud, piercing bark. And the barking is really, really challenging to deal with. But, I talked to you about being hypervigilant because she digs in the backyard, she gets into rocks, she does things she's not supposed to. And it means that we need to be mindful when she goes out and comes back in, or when she goes out, to keep an eye on her. And when I was sick and spent those couple nights in Daniel's room, we've been putting her in the crate at night. And I think I told you about this. Then in the middle of the night, I would get up, take her out, and then I go straight to the bathroom. So she knows to come in the back door. She goes into the bathroom, lays down on the rug, waits for me to go to the bathroom, and gets back in her crate. So for the few nights that I spent in Daniel's room when I wasn't feeling well, I just trusted that she could sleep on the bed with me and with Gracie. And at 5 a.m, Steve came in the first night. She's a very good watchdog. I was dead asleep and she barked like crazy, but she was able to stay dry until 5 a.m. So the next night I actually left the door open thinking if she needed to get down and let herself out, she would. And she stayed on the bed all night and she stayed dry. So when I kind of moved back into our bedroom when I was feeling better, we talked about, do we want to put her back in the crate? Because if we let her on the bed, that's 2 dogs on the bed with 2 people. And once we don't put her in the crate at night, I think it's going to be really hard to get her back in the crate. Steve was okay with it. So she slept on the bed. And then at 5 a.m, he took her out. She went into the bathroom. And then she went into her crate. Steve didn't put her there, and he gets up at 5. So when I got up to go to the bathroom, she came out of her crate and got on the bed. So I dozed for a little while, and then I woke up, and I use wired earbuds in my phone when I go to bed at night because I am on TikTok or I listen to a podcast. With Gracie, after Steve is up in the morning, I just take the earbuds off and I set them on the bed and I'm on my phone. Can you guess where this is going? You're right. So I had my back towards Maisie and she was on Steve's pillow and I was not being hypervigilant. That's the good news. And I heard her doing something. And by the time I turned around, she'd totally eaten my earbuds. She's a puppy. It was my fault. So I've gotten into the habit now, and that was my last pair of earbuds. So I had to order some more. And I've gotten in the habit now of when I wake up, I put my phone, I put my earbuds, I put everything in the drawer in my nightstand except for my phone, but I don't leave it on the bed. And this morning, and she has this habit, she likes to chew on towels. And we have 2 crates in the house, and she often will pull the towel through the bars and then chew on it. So this morning I was in bed, Steve had already gotten up, and I kind of heard her licking, and I kept reaching over to feel like, is she, chewing on the blanket? What's going on? And I finally decided to sit up and turn on the light, and Steve uses an electric blanket on his side of the bed. I use a weighted blanket on mine. Sure enough, she chewed through one of the wires, and she did not get electrocuted. It was not on at the time. But again, she's being a puppy, and it was my fault for not keeping an eye on her. But these are the things that we go through with having a puppy. There are some things that are just incredibly joyful. And, every time she does stuff that's annoying now, she doesn't stay on the bed. If he gets up at 5, she's up, she's down, she's inside, she's outside. It's time to play. So we've talked about a new strategy for how to manage when Steve gets up at 5. So these are all ways that we juggle, we shift, we move, we attune. Can you go with these things, or do you go into a narrative of, if it were you, would you get really angry at the puppy that, the puppy ate something or destroyed something? It's my fault. Puppy's just being a puppy. Puppies bark. Puppies get mud on things. When I was in Daniel's room, she was outside and it wasn't terrible, but there was mud on the bed from when she came in and jumped back on the bed. And it's like, this is what you get if you're going to have animals on your furniture and you let them outside and all of those things. So my questions to you are you able to make those shifts with compassion? Do you go into a narrative? And I think the thing that's so tricky is these narratives are not conscious. When I was getting that vaccine, it wasn't like, oh, you shouldn't have left. You should never go out, between clients. It was so subtle. And it wasn't until, I don't even know how I brought it up to mind, or this concept of feeling like if I would have managed my stress better, I wouldn't be experiencing this period of burnout. And it wasn't a conscious thought. And I didn't even want to talk about it until it became a conscious thought. So where is it that you have these, it could be the voice of a parent, you always do this, you always forget things, you always lose things, we always have to wait for you, you're always too sensitive, you're too dramatic, you mess things up, you don't complete things. Are any of those hitting home? And it's not my intention to hit a wound, but I think that we internalize so many of these things and we don't even know that we do it. So how can you catch those negative messages and then change them, to reframe it? It's okay. I'm supposed to make mistakes. I'm not supposed to be perfect. I don't always have to finish things. It's okay to re-choose. I'm not always on time. It's okay to not finish things. It's okay to change my mind. To really change those narratives. And I think that often we have challenges with executive functioning, which becomes executive dysfunction. And so starting tasks, completing tasks, sticking with tasks can be challenging. And then we get this narrative of being lazy or being unreliable or undependable, whether we've heard it from other people or from ourselves. And Jen talked about her challenge with showing up on time and how she's learned to embrace that. If you work with me, I tell you, sometimes I make mistakes with scheduling or with billing. I will always own my mistakes, but that is something that you will get with me. And I will own it and I will do what I can to fix it. But I just struggle with certain things. Task initiation is hard for me. Starting things can be really challenging. So how can you learn to change those messages that come up for you so that you have self-compassion? Because the reality is nobody is living a perfect life. I'm going to repeat that. Nobody is living a perfect life. It's so easy to look at other people's outsides and think that people have it going on, whatever that going on is, whether it's parenting or success or jobs or having more energy or keeping their house clean or eating healthy or exercising. We don't know what other things suffer in their life. And it's so easy for us to have these really unrealistic expectations about how we think we should be managing. I've told you I've got piles all over my house. There's dust, there's dirt. I go into the bathroom, and every time I sit down and look at the dirt on the floor, I think, oh, man, that needs to be cleaned. Have I cleaned it? No. And so for me, my choices are I either need to ask somebody to do it, I need to do it, I need to pay to have somebody to do it, or I need to let it be okay. And if I'm going to beat myself up about the state of the floors of my bathroom and my house and the dust and everything else, or do I just have compassion and know there's a lot going on right now and I'm focusing on the things that matter the most to me, and can I be okay with that? I was going to talk to you about Steve retiring, but I don't think I have enough time. Maybe I can do it just real fast. I don't know. I don't think I do. I'm going to have to save that for another time. He's been thinking about it for a year. His company was bought out by another company over a year ago, and the transition has been very, very, very bumpy. So he decided all of a sudden that he's retiring. So April 1st, April Fool's Day is his last day. So that's generated actually some really good discussions, some good coming together, some good talking about what we want to be doing and how we want to be spending our time, money, and energy, and how we're going to manage. So it's been very positive. And in the middle of this not having a lot of energy, it's been one more thing. Anyways, my hope is that you are all doing well. If you heard anything that resonates, I have a couple spots open right now. I'm full right now, but things shift. You're welcome to reach out to me at unapologeticallysensitive.com. I hope you're enjoying spring. And if you're not, that's okay. Remember, sensitivity is nothing to apologize for. It's our superpower. Have a blessed day.